Welcome back, my little art dealers, to
What to Watch Now,
where we talk about what's streaming on Netflix right now. And in today's episode, we are talking about Supernatural Season 1, Episode 19, Provenance. Provenance! Does that sound like a little, like a shitty little kid? And they say some mean quip to you about how their family's got more money than you. And before you could rebuttal, their mommy calls them from the playground. Provenance, come to mommy. We've got your 4 o'clock appointment, Provenance. Always rolls the R's for no reason. Well, anyways, today in Supernatural, this is one of, again, it's so funny because when you first watch it, you kind of wait for these things to happen because you think of other shows. But the thing with Supernatural is you cannot compare it to other shows. It is incomparable. I'm sorry. But when you have seen the whole season, these are one of those episodes that you're like, oh shit, these are one of those rare moments. So I would say this is maybe one of 2 episodes ever, or side characters, that Sam is genuinely in love with, genuinely has feelings for, could bloom into a healthy relationship, something. And you know how Dean had his one beautiful relationship? I think her name is Cassie, and there was like some major chemistry with her. Sam and this girl and another girl in another episode, these are his 2 moments. So this is kind of like a little rare gem amongst the many bunch. I don't even know how many episodes they have at this point. Did they celebrate 200? Or was it 300? It was a lot. Anyways, so we start off with a drunk wealthy couple having bought a very ugly portrait, which, again, I want to know, is that a thing? Like, don't rich people really covet their shit? Like, I don't think anyone drunkenly buys anything out of a joke. It, like, maybe like a you know, you can go on a date with someone and your money goes to charity or something like that. Or like something kind of super extravagant, like a weird plate or something. Like, I think of the First Wives Club when they got Sarah Jessica Parker's character to buy like a really expensive furniture and shit like that from the other wife's husband. I mean, that's possible, but like a scary, scary, ugly painting, no. Also, I've never understood why people wanted to buy paintings of other people. Like, I guess I get the portraiture that's done almost in a way where you separate yourself from the person themselves, like the woman being painted or something like that. But when it's straight up clearly like a family portrait from, like, I don't know, the 1912s, the 1890s, whatever time that would have happened, I'm missing something because I don't get it. Anyways, unfortunately, this is a great reveal moment with its death reveal. So they're cute, they're drunk, they're having their nice little moment, and they hang up the painting, remark that it's ugly. And I think we see the father's face in the painting move. Ooh, I love me a cursed object, but I love even more when you actually get to see the cursed object do something. Usually it's like the cursed object's around and shit happens, like a book box, but you don't see it physically come to life. So I love that they have fun with that shit. So the husband goes down to make sure everything's locked and checked. That's super important to note. So that theoretically no one came in the house. They came into an empty house alone. And when he gets into bed, all excited to be with his wife, have a cute moment, have a little drink, a little snuggle with each other, he puts his hand in something wet. He mentions the smell, and he turns on the light to see her throat has been slit. It's awful. It's so sad. Awful, innocent guy. And then we leave that terrible, horrific moment to little Dean putting his moves on. It's so funny how they wrote him initially like a caricature of himself. He has many more moments in the first couple seasons to make the point of what his character is. Like someone who flirts and hits on girls and fakes who he really is. That's a different, like, I remember I love when Sam even calls him out. He's like, who are we today? Rock stars? PR agents? This is so stupid that we're doing this. Like, why can't we be ourselves? And Dean maybe probably subconsciously is like, I don't want to be myself. I live a sad life. Please just let me escape into the fantasy with them. So we see his, A+ flirting, har, har, har. And he gets pulled away to Sam, who wants to focus more on a case. And Dean makes a little comment, but it didn't feel like a shitty comment where he was trying to put him down. But when he makes a comment to Sam, remarking that Sam hasn't had a date in a while, that he never asks girls out in comparison, I didn't feel like he was trying to put Sam down, but make a greater point. But we'll get to that. Anyways, as he, wait, let me look at my notes. Talks about, sorry, I was just trying to look over my notes. So Sam fills him in that he finds a murder that Dean, always points out the logical. That's the great thing about these hunters. That's a lot of things people don't understand about most paranormal investigators. They do believe because they have experienced shit, but they don't just blindly believe. They need to experience as much evidence as the next person. So, Dean makes the point of maybe it was just some unfortunate murder case. And Sam points out that no, all of the doors and windows were not only locked, but this is actually something that relates similarly to the notes in Dad's most unorganized journal ever. If you love John Winchester's journal, by the way, you should totally check out my Patreon and become a Patreon supporter, because I am doing something really cool I've been working on that's similar to that idea, and then something that is directly connected to supernatural. So if you're a supernatural fan or like that type of mystery stuff, please join my Patreon. It not only helps me, but I'm given plenty in return. So anyways, the boys go over to this house where the previous victims were. Again, breaking and entering as usual. And they're just trying to look for any sort of evidence of what it could be, because Sam sweeps the place and says there was no EMF, so it can't be a violent spirit. And Dean, who, may I add, Sam ever so lightly kind of makes a slut-shaming comment to Dean, which I thought was really funny. And he makes a good point. He says, well, maybe it's a cursed object, because it's like they are psychically attuned with what they like. I don't feel like it's poor writing. I think it's a combination of their experience, intelligence, and they just seem to always guess correctly. I think it just works out that way for some people. And they don't guess correctly every single time, but I just think that's something their characters are prone to being good at. And when they're talking about the cursed object, which we do know it is, technically, there's no furniture inside. So even if it was a cursed object, all of those objects have been taken to an auction house, sorry. And I've never been to one of these type of auction houses. I'm curious, have any of you had this type of experience? I have a Twitter in the link description below, as well as my Patreon. And the only time I ever went to an auction house was in the middle of nowhere. I'm talking just not a fucking house for miles, Illinois, in a terribly haunted barn. It totally looked haunted. And it was not a glamorous auctioneer situation. That's how I usually think of auction houses from that one experience. Or some sort of arena where it's kind of not that great, cool building. They made auctioning and the act of buying things regularly and selling very cool, very sleek. Something where I'm like, well, I want to have a cool, grandiose building and rishi drinks I'm just giving out to my random clients, private clients I've built up. And when they go to this auction house, they end up getting introduced to possibly Sam, love of his life. Honestly, in another world, I didn't know Jess, so I can't make the predictions of who she really is. But this is when we kind of get the insight of Sam constantly leading between this duality of his personalities and the lives he wants to live. He will always be smart, but I think part of him loves that yuppie shit, loves being, and being smart does not mean you're yuppie, but he kind of loves that world just a little bit, just a smidge. But ultimately in his heart, he's your all-American, just wants a beer, kind of hang out, super low-key, he's not very materialistic or anything like that. So I think he struggles between what he wants and where he fits in constantly, and kind of feels like an alien in both worlds. So for me, Jessica fulfilled his all-American side, and I think he's very loyal to a fault, so I think it could have worked out in the end between her and him. But, in all actuality, though, I don't think she was fulfilling every part of him mentally, you know what I mean? Again, didn't really know Jessica. We barely got to meet her. But then Sarah, while she really fulfills that other side of him, and she did have a bit of badassness to her, there's also, like, again, back to the whole all-American vibe. I don't know if she necessarily fulfills that. So she's kind of like the other toss of the coin, so to speak. And her and him have the most hilariously bullshit conversation ever. By the way, I want to point this out alone. This is what makes me laugh about the whole way TV portrays itself, and it's so fun to me. So art history is quite a task to take on, like, learning-wise. There is a lot. It is detailed. There are for sure names for everything. Lots of symbolism, so on and so on and so forth. Actually, the cool thing about art history is I actually am pretty good at history purely because of my knowledge of art history. I would not say I'm very skilled at art history, just to put that out there. But purely being able to see images, like I'm a better visual learner, and then kind of have rough dates in mind, I'm pretty good at being able to notice things. Or, like, sometimes I know historical figures that are not more well known to the general public just because of their portraits. So art history is super cool. You should totally get into it. But no one talks about the paintings the way these two were. And what I'm trying to say is art history is a very time-consuming thing. And because it is, I don't know how this man, who I'm pretty sure was studying law, had any fucking time to be able to spout out this shit, which made me laugh so hard. Also, another thing about art history that's really interesting is, like, art history, now I can't speak for everybody's college degree and what they learned, but I find people who know the most detailed conversational, like, vocabulary are antique dealers, because art history likes to more focus on European. There is for sure American art history, but even then they only focus really more on the super notable people. They don't focus on the little details of the minor artists that would have been more, like, most of the art you probably experience on a day-to-day are influenced by the artists that names never became big. So there are certain styles and names. And so what made me laugh is that Sam knew anything. And I was like, oh, shut the fuck up, Sam. Stop acting like you learned that casually in between shanking a vampire and learning for your, or studying for your law degree. Isn't that like LSAT's like really fucking hard? Like, isn't being a lawyer like pretty difficult and time consuming? So anyways, Sarah, that's her name, she comes down, she's all sexy, she's in her little black dress, and the two of them end up having a conversation. She ends up saving Sam and Dean. I love when Dean's just like, I'm not gonna even try putting on an act. I think he definitely has an automatic kind of wall up between these type of people, which is why I think he gets sensitive with Sam when Sam is expressing this part of his personality. But they get saved from Sarah's more stuck-up, rigid father. And they end up, when he's having kind of like a conversation with her, he ends up getting the painting's provenance. And this is when we learned what the name of the episode is, like why it's named that. A provenance is a certificate of origin. And there is actually a thing, it's kind of crazy, but like, so when you sell paintings, you can totally, it's like a whole thing they teach you way later in your art degree. They really should teach it to you in the beginning because it's extremely important for your values. Okay, so how do I explain this? Okay, so when you do paintings, there is a form you type up. You, especially if you're a screen printer, you want to say how many prints there are, when it was, what type of painting it is. There's a lot of information. And essentially, you are giving it a certificate of authenticity. But you are also basically saying to the person you're selling to, you're the only one with it, or you're only one of so many other people. So if you were to start selling that painting in like postcards or whatever, they could technically sue you and be like, you have proposed otherwise. This also gives, the reason why you would want to do this though, is you're basically promising the art dealer to want to spend more money on this painting, because as that painting grows with value, you're essentially promising it's worth spending, like, I don't know, $1,000 now because you're the only one that's going to have this one-of-a-kind painting. And essentially in however much time, it could be worth thousands upon thousands and so on. And I'm giving you the certificate to promise there's no other buddy that has it. But also, in addition to that, if that other person wants to find it valuable to invest in your art and then sell that painting to someone else when it has gained more wealth, they need that certificate of proof from the artist and so on and so forth. So, most artists on the street don't do that. They totally can. I've experienced those artists on the street that do certificate of authenticity, but it's just kind of an interesting background story they don't talk about a lot in art, but it's a totally boring legal thing you do. So anyways, the certificate of origin helps Sam and Dean basically go through and see where are the other people where is this painting been and where can they connect it. Now, Dean interestingly has a conversation with Sam about his butt. I thought that was a little funny again comment. Dean's like, you want to slut shame me? I'm going to talk about your butt. So there. He talks about how Sarah was checking out his butt and how Sarah and him need to go on another date conversation. Dean makes the point of saying that they need to do this, Sam needs to do this for some more information, but Dean's kind of egging him on a more personal note. This is when we start to have these important conversations because he makes a good point. On one hand, he's like, you need to be able to not have your life defined by this moment. I bet you, like, on one hand, I'm like, Dean, it's only been a year. It makes sense that he would be very fucked up and deserves as much time as he wants from this. Are you kind of moving him along? I mean, not that quickly, but kind of quickly. But then the other part of me thinks, well, Dean has the trauma of his entire life being decided by a man who was traumatized by the death of his wife, aka his dad and mom. He doesn't want to see his life traumatized again by his brother and his brother's death experience with his girlfriend, Jess. Either way, he's just looking out for him, and he can tell Sarah and him are into each other. And while Dean is always happy to see Sam hook up with anyone, Sam tends to be, he wants to pick someone because he really likes them and wants to see them more often. Not just because they're just simply cute. And you will hear by little comments in the future, it's not like Sam doesn't think these other girls are cute. I mean, I think he thought Meg the Demon was cute. I think there was a little something there. I don't think it was like full on being into, but I thought they kind of clicked a little bit before he knew she was a demon. So he has this date with Sam, but again, we get another one of those moments where, like, he's feeling all uncomfortable. He's in this world. He doesn't know if he fits along. And then Sarah makes him comfortable because she's just like him. She orders a beer. I want to be like, do you know how many posh people have breweries, go to private taste testings? Beer has nothing to do with value of money. In fact, beer can be so fucking expensive. It is crazy. You think it's cheaper, but it's not. It can get kind of nuts when it comes to the brewing. And if you ever want to know more information about that on like a goofy, boring note, my boyfriend's like incredibly knowledgeable about that shit. Again, he will deny it, but he's super well knowledgeable in that stuff. So if you ever want to like learn about like a good beer to have or something, well, this is like a side tangent. Okay, if you want a good booze to drink, I'm not a beer girl. But the recent beer that I thought was really good was called, I think it's called Borges, Borgs, and it's like a watermelon beer. So good. But I'm actually not a beer girl. I am a vodka girl because it's less calories and sugars, and you can have like one drink and basically get your buzz and you're good. And the best vodka you should totally fucking get is called Summon, Summin. And this vodka is only $13 for like an enormous bottle. And you can get a huge handle, a huge one that will last you for months for like $27. So it's not expensive and it's way smoother than Tito's or even Tower or anything. And I actually like it so much that I just drink it straight with water. That's how like good it is. So if you just need some good booze that's affordable, check those out. So anyways, except I don't think Borges is cheap. It doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. So anyways, so they're having their cute little conversation, and Sarah ends up being even more relatable besides the fact that they just click personality-wise. Turns out, Sarah also had a death as well. She's also talks about how she can relate about crawling into your shell and feeling uncomfortable, which is so unfortunate. But Sam, I thought was interesting, didn't open up in that very moment. I don't blame him. Like, that's really personal information. But it made him like her even more. She ordered a beer, she knew about art, and someone died in her life. At that point, like, if this was Tinder, he'd swipe left or right or whatever the fucking... I don't know which one it is. So as they're bonding with each other and everything like that, they're like, okay, cool. We know that we got the certificate of origins. We need to now get rid of the painting, though. So this is when we get one of those amazing moments that I wish they did more often in the final 15 season. I doubt they will. No offense to Jensen and Jared, but they are older men. They're in great shape, but I'm sure they don't physically want to do this. Sorry, I had to answer a phone call because my boyfriend called on his lunch break, so we were just chatting it up for a little bit. So anyways, going back to what we were talking about. Sam Jensen and Jared are not what they once were, and this is one of those cool, sexy moments when they're climbing over a gate. This is when the show is trying to figure out, like, maybe we're a show that has physical action. And while that is more saved for, like, Arrow and Flash and shows like that, I wouldn't mind more of the occasional actual physical element to the show. That would be really fun. It's a really cool moment. And unfortunately, when they get there, when they get there, they burn the painting, and I love this best part. So they burn the painting, they get everything fixed, they're done with the cursed object, but they go back the next day because Dean supposedly says that he lost his wallet. But it's all a ploy just to get him, Sam and Sarah together. It's so funny. I love his responses. Now, what essentially happens from there on out in the episode is the painting gets sold. The painting comes back to fucking life, and we get the best response ever from Sam. He's in the middle of this awkward conversation with Sarah, and legitimately he sees the painting and he just goes, "Oh my god!" It's like the best, most convincing acting ever. And of course, he's surprised to see this painting that got burned and come to life. Again, I always want to know about the actual scientific elements of this, because people just say, oh, ghosts are mysterious and the occult is mysterious. And I would argue that there is something scientific happening, but we just don't know how to measure it yet. And I just cannot wait for people to be open-minded and start getting into discovering that shit. I just think it's so fucking cool. So anyways, what essentially happens is the painting gets sold to one last person, and they do not successfully save Evelyn in time. I'm sorry, Evelyn, we didn't make it. There's always the count of 3, and there was the couple, and now you. That's 3 people had to die before someone gets saved. This is when the dynamic changes the rest of the episode. Sarah finally is like, okay, this is the deal. These boys are into the supernatural. They are lying about being art dealers. This is what they do. And this is when Sam becomes like a little boy and gets such a hard-on. And I don't mean little boy in the sense that he gets a hard-on, but like when he sees Sarah and the way she's trying to like help him do things, and she's kind of a badass in her own right, she's not afraid of this, he just feels like, oh, this is so cool. It's like she came to the office with me today. She's so cool and sexy. Wow, I wonder if she has a leather jacket. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's very bedazzled by her. It's really cute. You can feel like for just a small, tiny smidge, he has a glimpse into what it would be like if he could be with someone and truly be himself in every sense of the word. I mean, he doesn't even really have that with Dean. So, you know, just a little glimmer, just a little hope. So what essentially happens is they're like, okay, we've got to get this painting. We've got to go figure out what the fucking deal is with this painting. And essentially they do some research and they think they find what the initial culprit is. they find out through a very enthusiastic librarian, may I add. He is so enthusiastic, it's hysterical. I wonder if there's not a lot of, like, he's always been a crime buff himself, and he's just so fucking pumped. Like, maybe he's got a true crime podcast for all we know, and he's very excited that this murder happened in his particular corner of the world, and he's like, I've been dying to tell someone about this shit. So the Isaiah Merchant family, essentially, the husband was a barber, and he was very strict, and it was whispered down the lane, in fact, that the wife was going to take the kids and leave him, her kids and their adopted daughter. And essentially, the dad ended up slitting all their throats to prevent them from leaving and killing himself as well. But no, not in fact that, but we're going to find that out. So we get the best reveal ever, because they go to the mausoleum to try to burn the ashes or the bones of the father, who they think is the guilty party. They don't know how he's involved, what's the deal with the painting, essentially, but they know it's him, and it's obviously connected to this cursed object. When they go to the mausoleum, which they discover within the painting of the painting itself, so this painting essentially works in the same rule book as the witch's Roald Dahl, where remember the little girl trapped in the painting and the painting would change every day? So this painting is trying to let you know some clues, which I think is kind of interesting. I'm surprised that didn't tip them off then, that maybe, like, why would the dad be giving clues to them if he wants to murder all these people? You know what I mean? He doesn't, or does his thoughts manifest in the painting themselves? So anyways, he essentially, they go to the mausoleum from within the painting, and they see kind of like little tiny show ship crypts, but the father's bones aren't there. And they're like, okay, well, we're gonna at the minimum need to take away this painting. And this is when we get the whole show finale and how fucking cool it is. I love the reveal and everything like that. Sam and Sarah go inside to steal the painting, to make sure that everything got taken care of. The father's bones have been buried. We're in agreement. Everything's been taken care of. We're making sure everything's good. But the door shuts behind them. Dean realizes they're quickly in danger. And suddenly, it hits them. They're suddenly aware. They look in the painting, and it's not the dad missing. It's the little girl, and so is the straight razor in the painting. They learn that it wasn't the fucking dad, it was the little adopted girl. So we get this great moment when Dean's got to race over to the mausoleum because, and this is where it kind of all comes together and it's really cool, essentially they realize, okay, the little girl back in the day, this was like a thing, this is why antique dolls are the fucking creepiest. Back in the day, when a little girl would pass away, a way of kind of immortalizing her, so they would take her hair, which, like, by the way, like, don't you have to have an open casket? Like, this is where it gets kind of gross and creepy. But they would sew it into a doll, and that would be kind of a way of, you know, immortalizing her, essentially. So they immortalize her into this doll, and so her hair is kind of like bones, any sort of DNA left. And if they burned it, she essentially would burn the way all of their ghosts do when they burn the bones. And I love Dean's moment where he's trying to open the case with the gun, with the barrel of the gun, and he isn't able to do it, tries to leave for a moment, and then he has a moment, he goes, "Come on, Dean," and realizes he could just shoot the case. He successfully burns the doll and saves them, and saves Sarah and Sam in this near-death, terrible, wind swirling everywhere, great conclusion. I loved watching, like, her come out of the painting, her creepy face, her going after. You realize that the dad and his hand on her was kind of like always trying to warn people. He must have figured it out beforehand and was trying to warn people, and she probably sliced him up. Because we get a little background story that she was adopted because her previous family was all, you know, murdered, essentially. And so it was a great MO. It was basically like Orphan the movie, because who would ever suspect this little girl? You think she's a casualty in these terrible situations. You would never assume she is the person. And back in the day, people didn't really, people were kind of sexist and stereotyping. They wouldn't assume a quote-unquote innocent little girl of being capable of something like that. Nowadays, it's like, the kid did it! You know, people are very quick to judge. So, we end up kind of finishing up with a cute little kissy scene with Sam and Dean, oh my god, Sam and Dean, you wish, Sam and Sarah, but they basically essentially say goodbye. Sam has this meaningful conversation with Dean where he's like, listen, I'm not ready. I feel still traumatized from it, and I will move on when I want to move on. But, like, above anything, they make a good point in this conversation, because it's like, what am I going to do? Like, this life we live, is she going to come with us? Am I going to visit her? And honestly, when they have a great conversation between Dean or Sam and Sarah, he makes a good point. He feels like he is cursed. Anyone who gets close to him might die, which adds to the whole difficulty of him fully expressing himself. You know, Dean can't let anyone get close because he can't kind of come to terms with his own feelings. Sam can't let anyone get close because he's literally afraid they will die. I love when she's like, that is archaic bullshit. And like, she's like, I will not stand for it. And I think before he can make any good rebuttal and be like, well, technically I'm into the supernatural. I've seen some weird shit happen. You have no idea that I'm actually like a weird psychic child and have been cursed by a yellow-eyed demon. She cuts him off and makes a way better point. Anything can happen whenever. You trying to protect me from this one thing doesn't ultimately keep me away from the longevity of just what random chaos can happen in life. So your excuse is poor. So even though they don't end up being a couple, which they don't give it the best reason of why they don't end up at least occasionally seeing each other. I'm surprised she didn't become a repeating actress. I thought she did a good job. She didn't win me over the same way Cassie did. I loved Cassie, but I liked her just the same. She at least left all of us, including Sam, with an important bit of information or advice of just being like, listen, you can't keep everyone pushed away forever, because of what she just said. And I guess what I'm trying to make the conclusion of is, going forward, you're going to notice Sam and Dean have more closer relationships with just anybody. Friends, family. They are still very guarded as people, but I think that bit of advice is so small in this one tiny episode, but bleeds into a lot of other greater points. So yeah. Did I say that correctly? Man, I was a bit tongue-tied by the end of this episode. Sorry about that. Still fucking awesome, fun, classic horror type show. So fun. Love it. Can't wait. We only have like a few episodes left for the season finale, so it's about to get fucking amped the fuck up, and I'm pumped for it. Please become a Patreon supporter today. Please do not forget to subscribe on whatever platform you are on. Give it a like. Tell a friend. Help this podcast come to life. I love you in the most platonic way possible. Have a beautiful day. Bye.